Hello again, I am Blunty. I never thought, in this bloody day and age, in current year of 2020 sodding 5, that I would meet so many drongos who have just kind of no idea how video game resolutions work and HDMI output modes work. I figured, rather incorrectly it seems, that, even the average person has gotten to grips with that stuff by now. But here we are. The Switch 2 was on its way, and the dumbest among the gamer tribes were determined to scrape up any excuse they could possibly find to piss their pants about, which, among so many other things, is how I discovered, with tremendous frustration, there are seemingly a lot of people, or at least a few people, but very loud people, who really misunderstand the relationship between game resolution and video resolution. Now, the videos that brought this into sharpest contrast recently were the ones I made around Cyberpunk 2077 on the Switch 2. The ones where I was using the 4K gameplay capture that CDPR themselves provided to media types for our use in exactly that kind of video. I downloaded these 4K video files from CDPR's own site. I edited these 4K video files in a 4K video editing timeline in my 4K video editing software. I exported these 4K edits into 4K video files, and I uploaded these 4K video files to YouTube, where they could optionally be watched in 4K. And I marked these 4K videos as 4K in their titles, because it was the very first such 4K footage we had access to from this game, or this port of this game specifically, and that's a pretty strong pulling point. It was important information I wanted front and center, but as was well known by that point, as CDPR representatives in several hands-on events and during various press interviews and whatnot had made clear, the game itself on Switch 2 was targeting a 1080p resolution render in docked mode. And so, here came the comments from people who did not understand in the slightest where this seeming disparity came from. How could I possibly have 4K recorded gameplay from a game that doesn't run at 4K? What dark sorcery is this? And I got a lot of comments about this. Many, and I mean many of them, were really quite abusive, and so got deleted because I don't have to put up with that in my space. These are my videos, my comment section, and there are things up with which I will not put. But here is a representative sample of these comments. You do know Switch 2 Cyberpunk is not 4K, it's 1440p, but okay, if you want to keep clickbaiting, go ahead. So, first off, the 1440p thing? No idea where that came from. Just pulled right out of his bum, I suspect. Nobody anywhere has ever claimed that the game runs at 1440p in any form. But we'll just ignore that and move on. And to quote myself as I responded to this, clearly reaching the end of my Goram patience with this sentiment. Again, I got lots of comments along these lines. Mate, I'm the one with the source files, direct from CDPR themselves. I assure you, they're 4K captures, you bloody clown-ass twat pile. And no one, not me, not CDPR, not Nintendo, not anyone, ever claimed that the game was running at 4K native resolution. In fact, in several of the videos I made using the 4K footage from CDPR, the stuff they captured at 4K and they released to media in 4K video files, I was really specific about it being captured from a 4K output from the Switch's dock, as in the Switch and dock were set to output a 4K video signal, i.e. 3840 by 2160 pixel resolution. This does not mean, and has never meant, that the game itself was running at 4K. Now, for those of you who don't understand any of this, let me impress upon you why it's important that it was a 4K capture from a 4K output from the dock, even though the game itself was running at 1080p, and why it was important enough for me to feel the need to specifically reference that in the title of the video, that it was a 4K capture. You've been seeing various clips side by side already, and indeed you may have assumed by now the one on the left is 1080p capture. The Switch dock was set to a 1080p output. It was fed into a capture card whose software was set to record 1080p. The image on the right, however, is also the Switch 2 Cyberpunk port, but this time I had the dock set for 4K output, and I was feeding my 4K capture card that 4K signal and recording at 4K in a 4K video file format thing. And even though the game's internal rendering resolution has not changed between these two different recordings, the one output from the dock and recorded at 4K still looks cleaner, doesn't it? Let me switch over to a game with brighter, crisper, more contrasty, poppy visuals to help really demonstrate this difference in a way far easier to notice. In fact, I'm going to show you two, but we're going to start with Pokemon Scarlet. Freshly spanked up with its Switch 2 patch, which now lets it run at 1080p and 60 FPS. Yay for that. And once more, I've got some side-by-sides for you. On the left, the game running at 1080p with the dock set to output 1080p and my capture card and software set to record 1080p. And on the right, the game hasn't changed. In fact, I didn't even so much as restart the game between these tests. I just dropped back to the Switch 2's settings menu, asked it to output 4K. And again, let's just say it for the sake of saying it and being really specific about this so nobody anywhere could possibly misunderstand what I'm saying. This 4K output from the dock in the Switch in its 4K output mode into a 4K capture card recorded into a 4K video file. It's a lot cleaner and sharper, isn't it? Especially noticeable on extreme contrast items like the UI elements and overlay graphics and text in particular. And look, maybe in regular gameplay at a normal, comfortable viewing distance, especially if you game on a living room TV setup, you're a few meters away from the TV, whatever, maybe you won't notice the difference unless you see them side by side like I've done here. I notice the difference, mostly because I game at my desk more often than not on a pretty decent gaming monitor, so I'm sitting like 80 centimeters away from the damn thing. But the point isn't whether or not you're noticing it as your regular gameplay situations. The point is, if we are doing the kinds of comparisons and examination of the content that we were doing with Cyberpunk before launch and continue to do now that we have it in hand, it's important to note when we're dealing with 4K gameplay capture, because it makes a difference. It makes a notable difference, a noticeable difference in clarity, even if the game itself isn't generating a native 4K image, and nothing else changes except for the resolution the dock is outputting. So, to every gobshite who accused me of lying, or clickbaiting, or any number of other dishonest drivel, screw you, get wrecked by facts. To the rest of you, who make up the far larger portion of people who commented and engaged and whatnot and understood perfectly what was going on because, well, it's not that complicated, is it? Hopefully these visual examples have at least helped drive home the surprising difference in 4K output. I mean, you probably knew there was a difference, but now you've got a video you can point to and go, oh yeah, look at that. It's actually a bigger difference than I thought it was. Or perhaps a smaller difference than I thought it was, you know. Whatever your expectations and wherever you draw the line in the sand about what you're expecting there. But then again, of course, given that an ever-increasing number of you for the better part of the last decade have increasingly watched these videos on the pissy little screens of your bloody phones, very few of which can even display 4K, well, that's why I do the cropped-in close-up stuff, to really help push the idea, even for those of you with let's just say compromised viewing experiences. Enjoy pooping while watching my videos, I guess. Thanks for watching. I am Blunty. I will catch you next time, and thank you, as always, to the patrons. And an extra special shout out to the Switch 2 dock people. You know what you did for me. Thank you ever so much for that.